Toronto sits on the northwestern shore of Lake Ontario in the Canadian province of Ontario, about an hour by air from the U.S. border and roughly 5 hours by car from New York City. It is the most populous city in Canada and the fourth largest in North America, after Mexico City, New York, and Los Angeles. The city proper holds roughly 2.8 million people, while the Greater Toronto Area pushes that number past 6.7 million, and the broader metropolitan region tops 7 million. Geographically, Toronto is flat, low, and lakefront, with the downtown core hugging the harbor and the rest of the city spreading north in a tidy grid. The elevation runs around 76 meters above sea level, low for a major North American city. A deep ravine system threads through the urban fabric, giving Toronto a surprising amount of forest and trail for a city this dense. Toronto is one of the most multicultural cities in the world, with nearly half of residents born outside Canada. That fact shapes nearly everything you will experience here, from the food to the neighborhoods to the languages you hear on the streetcars. Toronto rewards urban-minded travelers who like dense, walkable, transit-rich cities with strong dining and art scenes. Food-focused visitors and museum and arts-goers tend to get the most from a few days here. The city supports weekend trips, longer cultural visits, and shoulder season getaways with equal competence. It also pairs cleanly with a Niagara day trip or a longer Ontario loop east toward Prince Edward County. By car, Toronto is about 90 minutes from Buffalo, 4 hours from Detroit, and roughly 9 hours from New York City. By air, it sits an hour and a half from New York and just over 2 hours from Chicago. Honest weaknesses are worth stating. Toronto is expensive by Canadian standards, with hotels and dining running well above national averages. Traffic ranks consistently among the worst in North America, so renting a car for in-city travel is rarely worth the headache. The weather swings hard between humid summers in the high 20s Celsius, around 80 Fahrenheit, and bitter winters that often drop below -10 Celsius, near 14 Fahrenheit. For most visitors, 3 to 5 days is the sweet spot for a Toronto trip. That window covers the headline, Sights, 2 or 3 neighborhoods properly, and leaves room for a side trip without rushing the rest. If you have only a long weekend, the city still works as a focused destination. You will lean more heavily on the downtown core and skip the day trip options like Niagara or Algonquin. Toronto's main airport is Pearson, code YYZ, sitting about 25 kilometers northwest of downtown and handling nearly all international and long-haul flights. There is also Billy Bishop Toronto City Airport on Toronto Island, which handles a smaller set of regional and short-haul U.S. routes. Billy Bishop sits within walking distance of the financial district, useful if your itinerary lands there directly. From Pearson, the fastest way into the city is the UP Express train, running from Terminals 1 and 3 directly to Union Station downtown. The trip takes roughly 25 minutes and the train runs every 15 minutes for most of the day. The one-way fare is in the 12 to 13 Canadian dollar range as of this recording. Confirm current pricing at upexpress.com before you go, since fares adjust periodically. Taxis and rideshare from Pearson typically run between 60 and 80 Canadian dollars to downtown, with peak traffic trips landing at the high end. Light traffic trips can come in around 32 Canadian dollars by the meter, but counting on that is risky. Driving in from the United States, the most common approach is across the Niagara border via the QEW highway. From Buffalo, the drive takes about 90 minutes on a clear day, making it the easiest international entry point. From Detroit and Windsor, you are looking at roughly 4 hours via Highway 401 through southwestern Ontario. From Montreal, the drive is around 5.5 hours, and Via Rail runs frequent intercity trains on the same corridor. Once you arrive, you almost certainly do not need a car for getting around the city. The TTC, which stands for Toronto Transit Commission, runs subway lines, streetcars, and buses across the central city and well into the suburbs. A single TTC fare costs $3.30 Canadian at this time, paid by Presto card, contactless credit card, or phone wallet. A weekly fare cap on the Presto card sits at $25.50 Canadian, which functions as a week pass. The monthly Presto pass runs $156 Canadian dollars, useful only if you are staying multiple weeks. TTC has no discrete weekly pass product, so the cap is the practical equivalent for most week-long trips. Presto cards are sold at every subway station and most transit hubs around the city. You can also tap an open-loop credit card or a phone wallet directly at the fare gates, which most short-term visitors prefer. Streetcars on Queen, King, Spadina, and Dundas form the backbone of east-west downtown travel. The Yonge University Spadina subway line handles most north-south trips through the core. Walkability in the downtown core is genuinely strong, with most hotels in the central zones putting you within a 15-minute walk of Union Station and the Eaton Center. Outside the core, distances stretch quickly, and you will rely on the subway or streetcars to reach the Distillery District, Casa Loma, or the High Park area. The Toronto Island Ferry runs from Jack Layton Ferry Terminal to the 3 island parks, with bicycles welcome on board. A round-trip ticket runs around $9 Canadian at this time, making it one of the better value experiences in the city. Google Maps gives you reliable transit directions in Toronto, and most travelers find it easier than the TTC's own app for cross-mode trips. Rideshare via Uber and Lyft is widely available, with a typical in-town fare in the $12 to $25 Canadian range for short crosstown trips. If you are renting a car for a side trip to Niagara, Algonquin, or Prince Edward County, daily rates start around $55 Canadian. Downtown parking runs steep, typically $25 to $45 Canadian per day at hotel garages, which is why most visitors skip the rental. Toronto has more than 80 distinct neighborhoods, but for most visitors, the decision narrows to 4 or 5 hotel zones. Each zone has a clear character, so picking the right one matters more than picking the right hotel within it. The financial district around Union Station is the default first visit zone for most travelers to Toronto. You are within walking distance of the CN Tower, Rogers Centre, the Eaton Centre, and the UP Express Terminus from Pearson. Hotels here lean upscale, including the Shangri-La, the Omni King Edward, the St. Regis, and the One King West. Expect nightly rates in the $250 to $450 Canadian range for these Tier 1 properties. The Omni King Edward in particular is a historic 1903 property worth a look if you favor heritage character over modern amenities. The entertainment district sits just west of the financial district, anchored by Roy Thomson Hall, the Princess of Wales Theatre, and a heavy concentration of restaurants. The Hilton, Hyatt Regency, and Marriott Downtown all sit in this zone, giving solid 4-star options. The zone works well for couples and culture-focused trips, with mid-range rooms running $180 to $250 Canadian per night. Yorkville sits north of the downtown core, near Bloor Street, and serves the upscale shopping and museum crowd. The Four Seasons Toronto and the Park Hyatt are here, with rates that match, typically $400 Canadian and up per night. Yorkville works best for travelers prioritizing fine dining, the Royal Ontario Museum, the Art Gallery of Ontario nearby, and high-end shopping along Bloor and Cumberland. The Harbourfront Zone, immediately south of the rail corridor, offers waterfront hotels like the Westin Harbour Castle and Hotel X Toronto. Rooms here run $200 to $350 Canadian per night for solid 4-star options. This zone trades some downtown walkability for lake views and a quieter pace, working particularly well for summer visits when the waterfront is at its best. For travelers prioritizing character over convenience, the Distillery District and surrounding Cabbagetown area offer boutique stays in historic Victorian buildings. Hotels here are smaller and more expensive per square meter, but the cobblestone setting, restaurants, and galleries make it a strong pick for repeat visitors. Across all zones, budget options under 150 Canadian dollars per night exist, but typically sit further from the core. The Holiday Inn Toronto Downtown Centre, Chelsea Hotel, and Courtyard by Marriott Downtown all fall in that band, with rates in the $130 to $180 range. Toronto hotel pricing varies sharply by season, with summer weekends and festival dates running well above the off-peak baseline. Toronto Maple Leafs or Blue Jays home games can drive rates 30 to 50% above the typical room price for that night. Booking 3 to 4 weeks ahead through Booking.com or directly with the hotel chain is the typical pattern for getting solid downtown availability. Airbnb is widely available across all Toronto neighborhoods, though some buildings restrict short-term rentals through condo bylaws. For loyalty program holders, the Hilton, Marriott, and Hyatt portfolios all have strong downtown coverage in the central zones. The Four Seasons Toronto is part of the American Express Fine Hotels and Resorts roster for travelers using that benefit. For most first-time visitors, the recommendation is the Financial District or Entertainment District for proximity to the headline sites. Yorkville or Harbourfront work as strong second choices, depending on whether your priorities lean toward shopping or waterfront atmosphere. Toronto's headline attraction is the CN Tower, a 553-meter observation tower that has defined the city's skyline since 1976. The tower still holds the record as the tallest freestanding structure in the Western Hemisphere. The main observation deck sits at 346 meters and includes a glass floor section for the brave. A higher sky pod deck extends to 447 meters for an extra fee. Adult general admission to the CN Tower runs in the 45 to 55 Canadian dollar range for the main deck at this time. Skypod access typically adds $20 to $25 on top of general admission. Confirm current pricing at cntower.ca since rates adjust periodically. Go on a clear day if you can. On overcast or hazy days, the visibility from the deck drops sharply and the experience is much weaker. The Royal Ontario Museum, known as the ROM, sits at the corner of Bloor and Avenue Road in Yorkville. It is the largest museum in Canada by collection size, covering natural history, world cultures, and dinosaur fossils. Adult admission runs roughly 30 to 40 Canadian dollars, depending on special exhibits. Plan 2 to 3 hours minimum for a focused visit. Serious museum visitors can easily spend a full day here. The Art Gallery of Ontario, known as the AGO, holds a major Canadian collection alongside European masterworks. The building was shaped by a 2008 Frank Gehry renovation that added the signature glass and wood gallery along Dundas Street. Adult admission runs around 30 Canadian dollars for general entry. The AGO's group of 7 holdings are the strongest in Canada and the single most useful thing to see if you want to understand Canadian visual culture in one visit. St. Lawrence Market in the Old Town District is the daily food hub of downtown Toronto. More than 100 vendors sell produce, baked goods, prepared food, and specialty groceries across the historic complex. The South Market building holds the main daily vendors and is open Tuesday through Saturday. Saturday morning is the busiest window and the most rewarding for first-time visitors who want the full atmosphere. Carousel Bakery inside the South Market sells the city's most famous pea-meal bacon sandwich. The line moves fast, and the sandwich is widely considered worth the trip on its own. The Distillery Historic District is a pedestrian-only collection of 19th century brick buildings converted into boutiques, galleries, cafes, and restaurants. Entry to the Distillery District is free, and it works well for a 2 to 3 hour stroll, especially in the evenings. The annual winter market in December transforms the cobblestone streets into one of the city's best holiday experiences. Casa Loma is a 1914 castle perched on a ridge in Midtown Toronto, just north of the downtown core. Adult admission runs in the 30 to 40 Canadian dollar range, and a typical visit takes about 2 hours. The grounds are open seasonally, and the architecture stands out in a city otherwise built largely on rectilinear grids. Movie buffs may recognize the interiors from several Hollywood productions filmed on location. Nathan Phillips Square is the public plaza in front of Toronto City Hall, anchored by the iconic illuminated Toronto sign. The sign has appeared in nearly every tourist photo since it was installed in 2015 and sits at the south end of the square. The square hosts free events year-round, including a major skating rink in winter. Skate rentals at the rink run around 12 Canadian dollars at this time. High Park is the largest public park in central Toronto, with hiking trails, sports fields, a children's playground, and a small zoo. Entry to High Park is free, and the park is open year-round, weather permitting. The cherry blossoms in late April and early May draw heavy crowds for roughly 2 weeks each spring. Plan an early morning visit during cherry blossom season if you want photographs without people in them. The Toronto Islands sit 15 minutes by ferry from downtown and offer beaches, hiking trails, a small amusement park, and skyline views back toward the city. A summer day on the islands is one of the best low-cost activities in Toronto. The round-trip ferry runs around 9 Canadian dollars at this time, and the islands are bike-friendly with rentals available on arrival. The Rogers Centre, just south of the CN Tower, is home to the Toronto Blue Jays and hosts concerts and major events throughout the year. A Blue Jays ticket starts around 25 Canadian dollars for upper deck seats and climbs to several $100s for premium club seating. Find schedules and tickets at mlb.com/bluejays. For hockey fans, Scotiabank Arena hosts the Maple Leafs and the Raptors and sits adjacent to Union Station. Tickets are notoriously difficult to find at face value, and resale prices run high for marquee opponents. The Harbourfront Centre hosts year-round dance, theater, and visual arts programming on the waterfront, with most events under 30 Canadian dollars. The Hockey Hall of Fame sits in the financial district at the corner of Yonge and Front. Adult admission runs around 25 to 30 Canadian dollars, and the visit takes 1 to 2 hours. For day trips outside the city, Niagara Falls is the obvious choice, about 90 minutes by car or 2 hours by bus or train. Adding a stop in Niagara-on-the-Lake for the wineries makes the day feel less rushed. Algonquin Park is roughly 3 hours northeast and offers canoeing, hiking, and remote camping across a vast wilderness of lakes and boreal forest. Prince Edward County, 2.5 hours east of Toronto, has become a wine and food destination in the past decade. The county concentrates independent restaurants and tasting rooms across a working agricultural landscape. For travelers who prioritize museums and architecture, the ROM plus AGO plus Casa Loma combination fills 2 solid days at a moderate pace. Day 1 of the museum itinerary starts at the ROM when it opens at 10. Allowing 3 hours for the Natural History Wing and the Dinosaur Galleries. Lunch at one of the Bloor Street cafes nearby, then walk 20 minutes south to the AGO for the Group of 7 and the European Collection through the late afternoon. Day 2 of the museum itinerary opens at Casa Loma in the morning for 2 hours of castle interiors and grounds. Lunch at St. Lawrence Market in the early afternoon, then finish with the CN Tower at sunset for the best skyline conditions. For travelers who prefer outdoor and waterfront experiences, High Park, the Toronto Islands, and the Harbourfront Walking Trail will easily fill 2 days. Day 1 of the outdoor itinerary heads to the Toronto Islands by morning ferry, with bike rentals on arrival and a picnic lunch on Centre Island. Spend the afternoon at the beaches on Hanlan's Point before catching the late afternoon ferry back to downtown. Day 2 of the outdoor itinerary spends the morning at High Park, including the cherry blossoms in season or the High Park Zoo the rest of the year. Walk or transit east in the afternoon to the Harbourfront Promenade, with optional kayaking at Harbourfront Centre in summer months. For sports fans, Timing a visit around a Blue Jays homestand in summer or a Leafs or Raptors game in winter materially upgrades the trip. On game day, plan a late lunch at one of the brew pubs near the Rogers Center or Scotiabank Arena, then walk to the venue 90 minutes early to soak up the atmosphere. Post-game, the Entertainment District restaurants stay busy until well after midnight, with King Street West offering the highest concentration of options. Toronto's food scene is defined by immigration, and the city is one of the most ethnically diverse in the world. That diversity has produced food districts you would have to travel to several different countries to assemble elsewhere. Greektown on the Danforth, Little Italy along College Street, and Koreatown on Bloor each anchor distinct cuisine clusters with their own restaurant density. East Chinatown around Girard and Broadview, and the larger Chinatown on Spadina round out the Asian cuisine clusters across downtown. There is no single signature Toronto dish, but a handful of items show up on lists of things you should try at least once. The pea-meal bacon sandwich is the most Toronto-specific item to seek out during a visit. Back bacon rolled in cornmeal, fried, and stacked on a Kaiser roll runs around 8 to 12 Canadian dollars. It is most associated with Carousel Bakery in the St. Lawrence Market, where the line moves quickly enough not to be a deterrent. Jerk chicken, brought from the Jamaican community, is a Toronto staple worth a dedicated meal. Expect 15 to 22 Canadian dollars for a full jerk chicken meal at takeout-style spots. Jerk chicken specialists concentrate in Little Jamaica along Eglinton West, where the highest density of authentic options sits. Naan pizza, which sounds like a contradiction, is a Toronto invention born from the city's South Asian diaspora. A naan-based pizza runs around 10 to 14 Canadian dollars at neighborhood pizzerias citywide. Smoked meat sandwiches, technically a Montreal export but ubiquitous in Toronto delis, are widely served across the city. A standout smoked meat sandwich runs 18 to 24 Canadian dollars at spots like Kaplansky's. Toronto's dim sum scene is genuinely excellent, particularly in Scarborough and along the Spadina corridor. A two-person dim sum lunch comes in around 35 to 60 Canadian dollars, depending on order size. Roti and West Indian roti, both from the Caribbean community, are a strong budget meal worth tracking down. Roti runs 12 to 15 Canadian dollars and concentrates in the Eglinton, West, and Parkdale areas. For dessert, butter tarts and Nanaimo bars are the two Canadian classics worth seeking out during a Toronto visit. Both run 3 to 5 Canadian dollars at independent bakeries and St. Lawrence Market vendors. Beaver tails, a fried pastry shaped like its namesake, runs around 9 Canadian dollars. The pastry is most reliably found at the Harbourfront Centre kiosks during summer months. Portuguese custard tarts can be found in Little Portugal along Dundas West, the city's traditional Portuguese neighborhood. The best Portuguese custard tarts run about 3 Canadian dollars each at the established bakeries. At the high end, Toronto holds its own with the best Canadian dining cities for tasting menu experiences. Alo, Adulis, Canoe, and Bar Isabel anchor the fine dining list across downtown and midtown. Tasting menus typically run 175 to 300 Canadian dollars per person before drinks. Mid-range dinner for two, drinks and tip included, lands in the 90 to 140 Canadian dollar range across most neighborhoods. Budget meals at counter service or food court spots come in around 18 Canadian dollars per person. Street food is concentrated in St. Lawrence Market and Kensington Market in the Old Town and West Downtown areas. The food halls inside the Eaton Center and Union Station offer a third concentration of quick lunch options for downtown visitors. A typical street food meal runs 12 to 25 Canadian dollars, depending on which market and which vendor. Coffee culture in Toronto is strong, anchored by a wave of independent roasters with multiple locations across the city. Sam James, Pilot, and Pourquoi Pas are the three names most reliably name-checked by locals. A standard Americano runs $5 to $7 Canadian at independent shops, slightly cheaper at chains. Tim Hortons, the Canadian chain, is everywhere across the city and serves as a default daily coffee for most Torontonians. A medium double-double, the local coffee shorthand for 2 creams and 2 sugars, runs about $2.30 Canadian. The double-double is a worthwhile cultural data point, even if you do not normally drink chain coffee at home. For breakfast and brunch, the strongest concentration sits in Leslieville, Roncesvalles, and Ossington. Expect to wait 20 to 45 minutes for a table at brand-name brunch spots on weekend mornings. Vegetarian and vegan options are unusually deep in Toronto, with the city ranked among the top vegan-friendly cities in North America for several years. Chains like Fresh and Planta anchor the higher-end vegan scene, with many independent spots in Leslieville and Parkdale. Reservation culture varies sharply by tier in Toronto. The fine dining spots require reservations 1 to 3 weeks ahead, while mid-tier restaurants generally take same-day bookings. Food courts and counter service spots are walk-in only with no reservation needed. For most travelers staying near the financial district or entertainment district, the best food clusters are St. Lawrence Market, Kensington Market, and the Ossington Strip. All three are reachable by streetcar or a short walk from most central hotels in the downtown core. If any of these hotels, tours, or experiences caught your attention, I have put links to booking options and more in the description below. Toronto sits at the high end of Canadian travel costs, comparable to Vancouver and meaningfully above Montreal, Halifax, or Quebec City. At the budget tier, plan for around $130 to $170 Canadian dollars per person per day. That covers a basic downtown hotel or hostel bed, 2 casual meals, TTC transit, and 1 or 2 free activities. Free or low-cost options at the budget tier include a walk through High Park or a Toronto Islands ferry trip. At the moderate tier, expect $220 to $320 Canadian dollars per person per day. This level supports a mid-range 3 to 4-star hotel in the entertainment or financial district, with table service meals including 1 nicer dinner. The moderate tier also covers TTC plus 1 taxi or ride share per day, and a paid attraction like the CN Tower or the ROM. At the comfortable tier, plan for $400 to $600 Canadian dollars per person per day or more. That funds an upscale hotel in Yorkville or the financial district, fine dining, taxis, and a flexible activity budget. The comfortable tier covers any combination of high-end museum admissions, theater tickets, or guided experiences without budget anxiety. Accommodation is the line item that swings the most across the 3 tiers. Hotel rates run $130 to $200 Canadian dollars at the budget tier, $195 to $280 at mid-range. Upper tier hotels in Yorkville or the financial district run $350 to $600 Canadian dollars per night and beyond. Food cost varies less than you might expect across the tiers. A counter service meal sits at around $18 Canadian dollars, a casual restaurant meal at $30 to $50, and a mid-tier dinner for 2 in the $90 to $140 Canadian dollar range. TTC Transit is one of the better value line items in the daily budget. A single ride costs $3.30 Canadian, and the weekly Presto cap of $25.50 Canadian functions as a week pass. Activity costs add up over a multi-day trip. Headline attractions like the CN Tower main deck and the ROM each run $30 to $55 Canadian dollars per person. Plan around 2 paid attractions per day at the moderate tier to keep the activity budget reasonable. Tipping adds about 15% to every restaurant bill in Canada. Factor that into your daily food estimates if you are tracking spending closely against a fixed budget. Compared to similar North American cities, Toronto runs slightly cheaper than Manhattan and noticeably more expensive than Chicago or Montreal. Most travelers find Toronto's value proposition comparable to a Boston or Washington trip in overall cost and experience density. The cost increase between the moderate and comfortable tiers reflects mostly hotel and restaurant choices rather than activity costs. Toronto rewards budget discipline because the free and low-cost activities are genuinely among the most memorable. Toronto Islands, High Park, and the Distillery District all deliver strong experiences without admission fees. If you are planning to use credit card points for hotels, the Hyatt Regency, Marriott Downtown, and several Hilton properties all accept points. The Four Seasons Toronto accepts American Express fine hotels and resorts rates for travelers using that program. These figures reflect typical 2026 costs as of this recording, and prices adjust seasonally. Verify current hotel rates and restaurant prices before locking in a trip if budget is the deciding factor. Toronto has 4 genuinely distinct seasons, and the visitor experience changes dramatically depending on when you arrive. Summer runs from late June through August and is the city's peak tourist window. Daytime highs sit in the 24 to 27 Celsius range, around 75 to 81 Fahrenheit. Overnight lows drop to roughly 16 to 19 Celsius, near 61 to 66 Fahrenheit. Humidity can make 30 Celsius afternoons feel meaningfully warmer than the raw temperature suggests, near 90 Fahrenheit perceived. Summer is when patios, waterfront events, the Carabana Festival in early August, and the Canadian National Exhibition all drive peak demand. Hotel rates run 30 to 50% above the off-peak baseline during summer, with the highest spikes around festival weekends. If you want patio season, harborfront events, and the Toronto Islands at their best, summer pricing is the cost of doing business. Book 3 to 4 weeks ahead minimum for summer trips to get downtown availability in the central hotel zones. The downside of summer is heat with humidity, which combines into a stickier feel than the temperature alone suggests. Crowded streetcars in the downtown core add to the summer friction for travelers used to less dense cities. Fall, from September through mid-October, is many locals' favorite season for the city. Daytime highs ease into the 16 to 22 Celsius range, around 61 to 72 Fahrenheit, with humidity breaking sharply. The substantial ravine system and Toronto Islands turn through fall color in late September and early October. September is a strong shoulder season window for value-conscious travelers visiting Toronto. Weather is comfortable, hotel rates drop 20 to 30% from peak, and crowds thin meaningfully across the central zones. The Toronto International Film Festival in early September adds a cultural draw, but expect a small rate bump during the festival week. Late October and November bring the wet season to Toronto. Daily highs drop into the 8 to 16 Celsius range, near 46 to 61 Fahrenheit, with frequent overcast days. Precipitation runs 12 to 13 days per month at 60 to 75 millimeters in late autumn, and the gloom can set in early. Winter runs December through February and is honest, genuine cold. January highs sit around -3 Celsius, near 27 Fahrenheit, with overnight lows at -9 Celsius, around 16 Fahrenheit. The lake effect off Lake Ontario produces snowfall, slush, and several stretches per winter where wind chill drops below -20 Celsius, near -4 Fahrenheit. The upside of winter visits is significant hotel discounting and light tourist crowds across the central zones. Winter also delivers a strong indoor cultural calendar with the Royal Ontario Museum and the Art Gallery of Ontario at their best. Hockey games at Scotiabank Arena and theater productions across the entertainment district peak during winter months as well. The downside of winter is that outdoor itineraries are constrained, with Toronto Islands closing most ferry runs and High Park trails icing over. Patio season is a memory, and walking between hotels and restaurants requires real winter clothing. Spring runs from March through May and is the most variable Toronto season for weather. March routinely produces freezing rain and slush, with daily highs hovering around 4 Celsius, near 39 Fahrenheit. April warms into the 11 Celsius range, near 52 Fahrenheit, but stays wet with frequent overcast days. May is the strong spring window when Toronto reawakens for the year. Daytime highs reach 18 Celsius, around 64 Fahrenheit, and the High Park cherry blossoms bloom for a 2-week stretch in late April and early May. Patios reopen in May, and the outdoor calendar begins to fill out ahead of summer peak. For most travelers, the strongest overall windows are late May through mid-June or all of September. Weather is comfortable, hotel rates run 20 to 30% below peak, and the city's outdoor calendar is active without summer's heaviest crowds. The peak summer window from late June through mid-August offers the fullest event calendar at the cost of higher rates and crowds. If your travel dates are fixed and they land in this window, it is still a strong time to visit Toronto. If you have flexibility, the shoulder windows give you a better value proposition with comparable weather. The 2 windows to avoid for most travelers are late February through mid-March, when slush and gray weather are at their worst. The second half of November is also weak, when daylight runs short and the holiday calendar has not yet activated. Canada operates on the Canadian dollar, currency code CAD. Recent exchange rates have run roughly 72 to 74 US cents per Canadian dollar. US passport holders do not need a visa for stays up to 180 days in Canada. Tipping in Canada follows the U.S. convention across most service categories. Restaurants and bars expect 15 to 20% at sit-down meals, with the upper end at higher-end venues. Taxis and rideshare expect 10 to 15% on top of the metered or app-calculated fare. Hotel porters and housekeepers expect a few dollars per bag or per night, respectively. Card acceptance in Toronto is essentially universal across all service categories. Tap and chip and PIN are the default for everything from coffee shops to streetcar fare card top-ups. Many businesses are functionally cashless post-2020, though cash remains legal tender everywhere. Carrying 50 to 100 Canadian dollars in small bills covers the occasional cash-only situation. Most U.S. bank cards work in Toronto with no foreign transaction fee penalty. Verify your specific card's foreign transaction policy before relying on it for a multi-day trip. Use cards from issuers like Capital One, Chase Sapphire, or American Express that explicitly waive foreign transaction fees. Most U.S. debit cards work at ATMs across Canadian bank networks. Expect a 3 to 5 Canadian dollar fee per transaction at most major Canadian banks. Scotiabank ATMs have a partnership with Bank of America that may waive the fee for B of A customers. Power outlets in Canada use Type A and Type B plugs, the same as the United States, at 120 volts and 60 hertz. U.S. travelers need no adapter for charging laptops, phones, or other small electronics. Mobile data on U.S. carriers like T-Mobile, Verizon, and AT&T typically rolls over to Canadian coverage on Day Pass or international plans. Verizon and AT&T Day Pass plans run around $10 US per day for full domestic equivalent coverage. T-Mobile international plans often include Canadian coverage at no additional charge for their international tier subscribers. For longer stays, a local prepaid SIM from Fido, Freedom Mobile, or Public Mobile starts around 35 Canadian dollars per month. Local prepaid plans typically include 10 to 20 gigabytes of data, useful for trips longer than a week. Wi-Fi is widely available in cafes, hotels, libraries, and the TTC subway stations across Toronto. Above-ground TTC signal can be patchy on bus and streetcar lines, so download offline maps before relying on transit data. Toronto is one of the safer, major cities in North America for travelers. Violent crime rates sit well below the U.S. average, and tourist-targeted scams are minimal compared to most European or U.S. destinations. The exceptions are typical urban risks worth keeping in mind. Watch for pickpocketing in crowded transit and at major attractions like the CN Tower and the Eaton Centre. Avoid leaving valuables visible in parked cars, especially near the financial district garages where break-ins are most common. Pharmacies are widely available across the city, with Shoppers Drug Mart as the largest national chain. Rexall and many independent locations cover most neighborhoods, with hours typically running 10 to 10 or longer. Most U.S. prescription medications can be filled at a Canadian pharmacy with a Canadian prescription. Getting that prescription may require a same-day clinic visit, since U.S. prescriptions are not directly transferable. For minor health concerns, walk-in clinics charge around 80 to 150 Canadian dollars for a non-resident consultation. Most downtown walk-in clinics stay open until at least 8 p.m. on weekdays, with shorter weekend hours. Tap water is safe to drink everywhere, in Toronto and across Ontario more broadly. The city consistently rates among the best municipal water systems in North America. Packing for a Toronto trip depends heavily on the season, but a few essentials carry across the year. Layers are the single most useful clothing approach for Toronto across most months. Pack a medium-weight jacket, a waterproof rain shell, breathable base layers, and comfortable walking shoes that handle wet streets. For winter visits, the clothing list expands meaningfully to handle real cold weather conditions. Add an insulated parka, insulated waterproof boots, a warm hat, lined gloves, and thermal base layers to the standard kit. Rentable winter gear exists in Toronto but is expensive, so packing your own is usually the better play. Beyond clothing, a few small gear items make Toronto travel meaningfully easier across any season. Bring a day pack for museum visits, a refillable water bottle for outdoor itineraries, a portable charger for long sightseeing days, and a small umbrella for the wet season. Toronto's nightlife concentrates in the entertainment district around King Street West. Cocktail bars cluster on Ossington and Dundas West, and live music venues run along the Queen Street West corridor. The art scene is among the strongest in North America for theater productions. The Princess of Wales, Royal Alexandra, and Mirvish theaters run major touring shows on a continuous schedule. The Soul Pepper Theatre and Tarragon Theatre anchor Toronto's independent theatre scene with regular original productions. For sports, Toronto fields 5 major league teams across hockey, basketball, baseball, soccer, and Canadian football. The Maple Leafs, Raptors, Blue Jays, Toronto FC, and the Argonauts give the city one of the most engaged sports cultures in North America. The official language is English, and signage across the city is in English. French is also an official language of Canada, though you will rarely encounter it in daily Toronto life outside government buildings. Toronto is best for travelers who want a dense, urban, food-forward, transit-rich North American city. The city delivers deep cultural offerings and reliable infrastructure that rewards travelers comfortable with major metro pace. Couples planning a long weekend with a mix of headline sites and good restaurants will find Toronto unusually rewarding for the dollar. Museum and arts goers will find a roster competitive with Chicago or Washington at slightly lower cost. Visitors interested in natural history, modern art, or theater will get strong value from a multi-day Toronto trip. Food-focused travelers, particularly those interested in immigrant cuisine, will find Toronto exceptional across the city's neighborhoods. The breadth of Asian, Caribbean, Middle Eastern, and Eastern European restaurant clusters is among the best in North America. Solo travelers and digital nomads benefit from the safety, walkability, transit, and English everywhere environment of central Toronto. Toronto is less ideal for travelers seeking dramatic, natural scenery, classic European-style historic centers, or warm weather beach trips. The lakefront is pleasant but not a tropical destination, and the historic core is industrial rather than centuries old. Toronto is also a hard match for car-centric travelers used to driving everywhere on a trip. City traffic is consistently rated among the worst in North America, and downtown parking is expensive and limited. For travelers with very tight budgets, Montreal or Quebec City offer a similar Canadian cultural experience at noticeably lower cost. The honest value verdict: Toronto delivers a strong urban trip at a price point comparable to a Boston or Washington visit. The city's food and cultural depth rewards 3 to 5 days, and the breadth of neighborhoods rewards return trips. If your priorities are urban density, food, transit, and broad cultural depth, Toronto is a clear yes. If your priorities are scenery, history, or budget travel, look elsewhere in Canada first before booking Toronto. That is our guide to Toronto, Canada. Everything mentioned is linked in the description below. If you are planning another trip, we have more guides waiting for you. And if you have not yet, subscribe so you do not miss the next one. Thanks so much for watching.